Hi, this is Ginny Pomeroy, and today we're talking about energy balance and weight control. And I think we all understand that obesity is a national problem in the United States. More than 30% of adults in the United States are obese, and we spend a lot of money, both individually and in healthcare costs, because of that. So health consequences of obesity are all over the body. So in the brain, there's increased incidence of Alzheimer's and stroke, heart disease, hypertension, fatty liver disease, gallstones, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, gout, sleep apnea, which is where people stop breathing when they're sleeping for short periods of time. But this can have very dire consequences on that person's health. Gastroesophageal reflux, GERD, which we talked about a little bit when we were talking about digestion. Increased incidences of cancers, colon cancers, esophagus cancer, uterus, breast, pancreas, kidney cancers, gallbladder cancers are all associated with obesity. Infertility in women and erectile dysfunction in men are also problems associated with obesity. So poor diet and lack of activity is the main contributor to obesity, but there are some other physiological factors. But the problem is that obesity leads to disease, which can lead to early death. However, many Americans can make changes by changing how they eat and eating healthy food, exercising regularly, and bringing their body weight down. So obesity is characterized by excessive body weight, and there are a couple ways that they measure it. The body mass index, the BMI, is one way that many people measure your obesity. And basically it's a simple calculation of how much you weigh divided by how tall you are. So if your body mass index is below 18.5, you're considered underweight. If you are above 40, you're extremely obese. 25 to 29.5 is overweight. 30 to 39.5 is obese. This narrow range of 18.5 to 24.9 is considered a healthy index. This graph just shows that somebody who weighs 150 can be any of these things depending on how tall they are based on these calculations. So if you are 6'6" and you weigh 150, you're going to be underweight. If you are 5'10" and 150, you're considered good with a healthy weight. If you weigh 150 and you're 5'1", you're going to be considered overweight. And if you're 150 and are only 4'10", you're considered obese. All right, BMI and risk of death. It's just both underweight people and overweight people have an increased risk of death. People who are obese have a much higher risk of death. Okay, so there's just a little bit of a conundrum here. If you look at these two gentlemen, they both have the same BMI, but they do not look the same. So one of the things you have to remember is that muscle weighs more than fat. So somebody who's very muscular is going to have a high BMI. It does not necessarily correspond to the same health problems that this person who's very overweight and fat will have. So another measurement that is a little bit more specific is the percentage of body fat. And so body fat, percentage of body fat are these calculations, and they're different for men and women. So a healthy body fat percentage is 13 to 21% for men and 23 to 31% for women. And you can see the different breakdowns for overweight, obese, and extremely obese. And let's see where we are here. I keep moving this around. Sorry about this. Okay. The way they calculate percentage of body fat is what they call skin fold thickness. And they measure this with calipers. These little guys right here are called calipers. And they measure different parts of your body in your abdomen there, under the folds of your arms, or a couple places where they calculate the amount. It's the depth of your subcutaneous fat. This is also another more technologically advanced way. This dual energy X-ray also can calculate percentage of body fat. Okay, so energy balance and weight control are related. So basically, we've all heard about calories in equals calories out. And if you want to maintain your weight, that actually is true. The number of calories that you eat have to equal what you burn. And so if you eat more than you burn, you gain weight. If you eat less than you burn, you lose weight. All right. So how does our body use energy? Well, we have a number of different things that gobble up energy for us. And basal metabolism is the basic one. So basal metabolism is just the energy we need for our basic physiological functioning, such as breathing and blood circulation and other organ functions. Funnily enough, we also have a thermic effect of food. So in other words, when we eat food, it takes energy to digest, absorb, and process all the nutrients that we are getting through our food. Then the other major output of energy happens when we are physically active. And physical activity is defined as exercise, and we all know what exercise entails. But non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT for short, is all the things that our muscles do without our thinking about it. So all the fidgeting and shivering, maintaining good posture, for instance, these all are using up energy. So there's a way to calculate this, and I'm going to show you an example. Let me just go back here. I know this is a little bit hard to see. So depending on how active you are, whether you're sedentary, low active, active, or very active, you have this factor. It's called a physical activity, or PA factor. And you need that calculation. You need to have your body weight in kilograms. So you need to calculate that. You need to convert your height into meters. And then you put it into this calculation. So this is the men's calculation right here. This is in your book, by the way. And this is for the women. So I'll just go through a quick example of how you figure that out. For a 20-year-old woman who is 67 inches tall and weighs 143 pounds and does 45 minutes of moderate physical activity a day, the physiological factor from that chart just a moment ago is 1.12. She calculates her weight in pounds into kilograms. She calculates her height in inches into meters. And now we're going to plug it into this. This is the calculation. Her age is here. So it uses age, pounds, inches, and physical activity factor. And so it's a little bit more specific than the general calculation that is in your module at the beginning of this module. So plug in her age here. We plug in her physiological factor here. We plug in her weight here, we plug in her height here, and then we do the math, and it comes down to this calculation is 215.18, this calculation is 681, this calculation is 1,200.2, and you add these three factors together to get her daily calorie intake should be 2,097 kilocalories per day. All right. So let's just look at fat cells just for a moment. In negative energy balance, our fat cells are going to release fat so that we can burn those fatty acids into energy. And when that happens, our fat cells shrink and weight goes away. In positive energy balance, it means our fat cells are expanding and absorbing the fat and storing it. And once filled to capacity, we will make more fat cells. So that's one of the things that we need to be aware of. Our bodies keep thinking that we need to store fat. Okay, I just want to mention a few physiological factors. Hunger and satiety. Hunger is what drives people to eat. Satiety is the feeling that you have when you've had enough to eat. And so there is an area of your brain called the hypothalamus, and that orchestrates your hunger regulation. There are some hormones that influence this, and ghrelin is one of the hormones that increases hunger. Our stomachs release this when our stomachs shrink after emptying food into our digestive system, our intestines, and when there's nothing there, then our stomachs start signaling that, well, it might be time to give us some more food. So ghrelin is the hormone that does that. Leptin is produced by our fat cells, and it actually decreases hunger. So you would think that people who have a lot of fat would not be hungry very often. But unfortunately, what happens is people who do have a lot of fat cells produce a lot of leptin. And over time, that leptin starts causing those cells to become resistant to the message. We may, in the sugar module, I think it was mentioned how many people who have diabetes have insulin resistance, and it's the same idea. It's where there's too much of this hormone circulating in your blood, and it's not, so that pretty soon the little receptors on the cells no longer sort of see the hormone and don't attach it, so that they're not getting the message. So basically, these people don't get the message that they're not hungry anymore, and they want to keep eating. And that's part of the reason why being very obese is so difficult to lose weight. All right, here are a few factors that contribute to obesity. Our food environment, basically what we have around us. Portion sizes, and certainly over the past 25 years, our portion sizes have increased significantly. And fewer home-cooked meals. A lot of us rely on going out to eat. It's one of the benefits, if you can say, of being quarantined at home is that many of us have sort of relearned how to cook, and that is maybe a little bit of a silver lining. But choosing the right foods is certainly an important factor. People who don't get enough sleep actually end up having more of a weight problem than people who do get plenty of sleep. Pregnancy is always a little bit of a difficulty for many women. It's natural, of course, to gain weight when you're pregnant, but losing the weight afterwards can be difficult for some women. Being emotionally stressed is another factor that seems to lead to weight gain. Stress is very damaging. Sedentary lifestyle, so those of us who sit at a computer for most of the day. Lots of television watching can lead to problems. And then just communities where we no longer walk from place to place, but have to drive from place to place. Or maybe communities don't have very many parks or trails, just a lack of that. Many prescription drugs can lead to problems with obesity as well. And smoking cessation has also been linked, just simply because people who are trying to stop smoking tend to want to do something with their mouth, so they keep eating. Genetic factors do play some role. And in the last thing I want to mention about that, about factors contributing to obesity, is actually there's been a lot of very interesting research recently on what the composition of your microbiome is. In other words, what specific little bacterial species are living within your intestines can be a real can be related to just how hard or easy it is for you to maintain a healthy weight. And one of the therapies that are being used for some people are actually a fecal transplant. Somebody who has a healthy weight is contributing feces, and of course it's cleaned up a little bit, but basically the organisms that are in the healthy person's feces are being introduced into the colons of people who are overweight, and they are finding that these people are able to start losing weight in a more effective way. So lots of interesting things in the field of nutrition. So thank you for listening, and I wish you well.